Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not to the grand battles or royal courts, but to a far more intimate and relatable place, the medieval bedroom. Imagine yourself, somewhere in the heart of 14th century England, the sun having long since dipped below the horizon, the last embers of the communal fire cast flickering, dancing shadows across the cramped, smoky hall. You can hear the low murmur of your family, your parents, your siblings, maybe a couple of farmhands or even a travelling tradesman, all settling in for the night. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, wet wool, and the faint, earthy aroma of the animals just outside the door. This isn't a peaceful, silent sanctuary. It's a bustling, noisy microcosm of your day, simply happening in the dark. It feels chaotic, a little overwhelming, and you probably won't survive this if you're expecting a quiet, private space just for yourself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and if you're up for it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've finished your last meal of bread and a bit of dried fish, and now you trudge over to your spot. There's no private room. Of course, that's a luxury you can barely even imagine. Instead, you find your place in the large, single chamber of the house. For most people, your bed is a simple sack, stuffed with straw, rushes, or old rags. It's lumpy, scratchy, and surprisingly cold. You pull a rough woolen blanket over yourself, feeling the coarseness against your skin. This is your personal space, carved out for a few precious hours of rest. You can hear your father snoring nearby and the faint rustle as your mother shifts beside him. A mainstream historical fact is that a vast majority of the population, even into the late medieval period, lived in single-room homes. The concept of separate bedrooms for privacy and sleep was something that evolved much later. Starting with the very wealthy, as you lie there, you try to get comfortable. The floor is cold through the thin mattress. You tuck your hands inside your tunic to keep them warm. Historians still argue whether this communal sleeping arrangement was a matter of choice or simply a necessity born of limited resources. Was it a cozy, comforting community experience? Or was it a source of constant irritation and lack of personal space? You'd probably say the latter, especially when your younger brother kicks you in the shin in his sleep. The family is so close, not just in sentiment, but in a very literal, physical sense. There's no escaping the sounds, smells, or movements of the people around you. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often slept completely naked. In fact, wearing nightclothes to bed was considered strange for a very long time. The few bits of clothing you owned were too valuable to be worn down by sleeping in them. So, you're just you, your scratchy straw mattress, and a single, heavy blanket. The idea of a special outfit just for sleeping, it's a modern invention you can't possibly fathom. The night air, even indoors, is often chilly, and you can feel the drafts seeping through the cracks in the walls. You pull the blanket up higher, trying to block out the cold. Sleep is not a retreat into a private world, it's an endurance test against the elements and the people around you. The world outside is just as noisy, with the occasional bark of a dog or the far-off cry of a night bird. You close your eyes, trying to find a rhythm in the chaos, hoping the morning comes quickly. As you shift on your lumpy bed of straw, you feel a gentle nudge. You open your eyes in the low light of the dying fire and see your younger sister's foot inching its way toward you. She's dreaming, kicking out in her sleep. There is no such thing as personal space here, no quiet corner to call your own. The whole family, and sometimes the whole household, sleeps together in the main hall. You can feel the warmth of another person nearby, and the faint, distinct smell of wood smoke clinging to their hair. It's a collective breathing, a shared rhythm in the darkness that is both comforting and completely overwhelming. You pull your knees up a little, making yourself smaller to avoid the errant kicks. This is the reality for almost everyone you know. A mainstream historical fact is that private bedrooms were an extreme rarity and reserved exclusively for the very wealthy. Like lords and high-ranking clergy, most homes were a single, open space that served as kitchen, living room, and bedroom all at once. The idea of a separate room for sleep, a door to close, a wall to lean against that isn't also shared by someone else, is pure fantasy. You simply find a space on the floor, roll out your mattress, and join the slumbering mass. The arrangement is a practical one, driven by the need to conserve heat and space, but it also means that nothing is private. Your parents' quiet conversations, your sister's sleep talking, your uncle's thunderous snores, all of it is a shared nightly symphony. This is also a place for communal stories and news. During the day, you're all busy with your chores, your farming, your work in the forge or the fields. But at night, as the fire dies down, the voices get lower, and the stories come out. You remember an old man, a travelling tinker, who stayed with your family last week. He told wild tales of far-off cities and magical beasts. His voice a low rumble in the darkness. You recall a light joke he made about a king so rich he had a bed all to himself. And the room erupted in soft laughter. The very idea was preposterous. Historians still argue whether this closeness fostered stronger family bonds or created more social tension. On the one hand, everyone was forced to be in each other's business. On the other hand, it meant no one was ever truly alone in the dark. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that medieval beds were not only for sleeping, they were often used as a central social hub. People would receive visitors, eat meals, and even conduct business from their beds. The bed was a statement of status and a piece of functional furniture, not just a place to sleep. If you had an actual bed frame, it was a major symbol of your wealth and standing. You, however, are on your straw sack. So a bed as a social hub is a very abstract concept. You're just trying to get some rest without your sister kicking you again. The air is still, but the room is alive with the quiet hum of bodies breathing, shifting, and dreaming together. You pull your blanket tighter and close your eyes, hoping to drift off into a world of your own, even if just for a few hours. You're startled awake by a soft, warm pressure against your feet. It's not your sister this time, but the bristly muzzle of a sow. The pig, having wandered in from the small attached sty to escape the chilly night, is now nudging you for warmth. This is just part of the nightly experience. Your bed is not just a place for humans. It's a shared space with the family's livestock, who often find their way indoors during the colder months. You reach down and give the pig a gentle pat on the head. Her sleepy snorts a familiar sound in the darkness. It's a furry, warm alarm clock waiting to happen, but for now, she's just another member of the household seeking a cozy spot. A mainstream historical fact is that it was extremely common for medieval peasants and even some gentry to share their living spaces with their animals. The main reason was heat. A cow or a pig in the house was like a living furnace, radiating warmth that helped to keep the whole family from freezing during the long, cold nights. This was a practical solution to a very real problem. The animals provided not only warmth but also a sense of security against predators and thieves. You can hear a cow chewing her cud peacefully in the corner, a rhythmic, gentle sound that, for some reason, is deeply calming. This arrangement also kept the animals safe from theft, a constant concern in a world without locks and keys. You might even find a hen roosting in the rafters above, her quiet clucking a soft lullaby. There's a light joke that you often hear from the older folk: sleep with a pig, and you'll wake up a farmer. It's a nod to the undeniable closeness of your life and the lives of your livestock. Your livelihood depends on them, so it's only natural that your survival depends on them too. Historians still argue whether this closeness was a choice born of necessity or if it created a closer, more empathetic bond between humans and their animals. You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You know each animal's temperament, their sounds, their smells, and you're aware of their presence in the room in a way that modern people could never understand. The smell of the stable is a constant presence in your home, and frankly, you've long since stopped noticing it. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the animals were often considered part of the family, to the point where they sometimes appeared in wills and legal documents. An especially valuable cow or horse might be willed to a son or daughter, showing their importance not just as property, but as essential members of the household economy. It's a strange thought to you, but it makes sense. These animals are your food, your transportation, and your warmth. They are the difference between life and death in a harsh winter. As you pull your blanket up to your chin, the sow's gentle snorts are now a steady rhythm, a lullaby of the barnyard. You feel the warmth radiating from her as you finally drift back to sleep. a small, shared sanctuary in the darkness. The pig has finally settled down, her gentle snuffling a comforting sound against the chaotic backdrop of your shared bedroom. The fire has died to mere glowing embers now, and the darkness feels deeper. You shift, trying to find a more comfortable position on your straw sack, and feel a sudden, urgent need. There's no running water, no plumbing, and certainly no bathroom down the hall, so you quietly, carefully, make your way to the corner of the room. This is where your family's chamber pot sits, a simple ceramic or wooden vessel, ready for its nightly duty. It's a quick, stinky trip in the low light, a necessary interruption to your slumber. A mainstream historical fact is that chamber pots were the universal solution for a late-night call of nature. In a time before indoor plumbing, this was the most common way to handle bodily waste during the night, especially for people living in multi-story houses or in urban centres. It was a practical, if unpleasant, necessity. After use, the pot would sit in the corner until morning, when its contents were unceremoniously dumped outside, often into a ditch, a privy, or, in the worst cases, right out a window onto the street below. This practice, of course, was a major contributor to the unsanitary conditions and foul smells of medieval towns. You try to be as quiet as possible, not wanting to disturb anyone, but the squeak of the pot on the floorboards feels deafening in the silence. Historians still argue whether the lack of sanitation and the casual disposal of waste was a major cause of disease, or if other factors, like diet and general living conditions, played a more significant role. You don't think about it in those terms. You're just trying to get through the night without stepping in anything you shouldn't. The smell, a mix of the pig, the fire, and the chamber pot, is a part of the sensory experience of your home, and you've learned to ignore it. A light joke you hear sometimes is that if you live in a city, you must always beware the nighttime waterfall, a reference to the unpleasant surprise that might come from a window above. It's a joke, but it's also a grim reality. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the cleaning of the chamber pots was often a dedicated job, especially in larger households. There was sometimes a specific servant whose only task was to empty and clean the pots each morning. This person, known as a groom of the stool or a similar title, was responsible for this unpleasant but crucial chore. For you, it's just another morning task that your mother or father handles. You quickly return to your straw sack, trying to settle back in before the cold seeps back into your bones. The chamber pot sits silently in the corner, a testament to the simple, often gross, realities of life without modern conveniences. You pull your blanket up to your chin, hoping for a dream that's less earthy. You've made your brief, stinky excursion to the corner and are now back on your lumpy bed of straw, trying to re-find your warmth. The fire is almost entirely gone, but a few orange glows still cast long, wavering shadows across the room. The quiet is now profound, broken only by the soft snores and the rhythmic chewing of the cow in the corner. This is the moment for stories. As a collective, people huddle together not just for warmth, but for comfort. Your father clears his throat and begins a story, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. He tells a tale of a brave knight who fought a dragon, his words painting pictures in your mind that the darkness cannot obscure. It's a moment of pure, shared imagination. A mainstream historical fact is that storytelling was one of the most important forms of nighttime entertainment and education. Without books, electricity, or other media, oral traditions were how history, legends, and social norms were passed down. Families would gather around the fire, telling stories that had been passed down for generations. These weren't just simple tales, they were often moral fables, cautionary tales, or epic sagas that taught children about courage, virtue, and the dangers of the world. You remember a story about a mischievous forest spirit that your mother told you, her voice dropping to a whisper to make it more suspenseful. These stories are a huge part of your childhood and your understanding of the world. Historians still argue whether this reliance on oral tradition led to more or less social cohesion. On one hand, everyone knew the same stories and legends, creating a shared cultural fabric. On the other hand, the stories could change and morph with each telling, leading to different versions of history and legend in different regions. Was it a unifying force or a source of regional differences? As your father's story winds down, you hear your sister humming a soft song, a lullaby she learned from your grandmother. This musical tradition is also a vital part of the night. People would sing songs of love, loss, and work. Their voices a gentle hum that could eventually lull a tired child or a tired adult to sleep. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some songs were believed to have magical properties. Certain melodies were said to ward off evil spirits or bring good luck. Your grandmother has a song she sings about a benevolent fairy that she claims keeps the bad dreams away. You don't know if it's true, but you feel a sense of comfort listening to it. This blend of entertainment, education, and superstition is what defines the nightly routine. The night is a time for the family to come together, to share in the warmth and light of the last embers, and to escape into a world of shared narrative. The stories and songs are a blanket of sound, a final layer of comfort before the long, silent hours of sleep. You close your eyes, the last words of your father's tale echoing in your mind, and finally feel yourself drifting away. The warmth of the stories and songs has faded, and the quiet of the night has returned. You're nestled in your straw sack. The sounds of your family's breathing are familiar comfort. But as you lie there, you can't help but think about the homes of the local lord or the wealthy merchant in the nearest town. You've heard whispers of their homes having not just one large room, but multiple rooms, some even dedicated solely to sleeping. The very idea is mind-boggling. You imagine a space where your bed is not on the floor but is a large, wooden structure, with curtains that can be drawn for privacy. This isn't just a bed, it's a statement. A mainstream historical fact is that the private bed, and by extension the private bedroom, was one of the earliest and clearest markers of social class. For most of the medieval period, the wealthy slept in large, often ornate, canopied beds. These beds were not just for comfort, they were symbols of status and power. A lord's bed might be decorated with carvings and rich fabrics, and it was often placed prominently in the great hall to be seen by all who entered. It was a piece of furniture that was meant to be admired and shown off. This is a far cry from your humble straw sack, which you simply roll out and put away each day. Historians still argue whether the move towards private bedrooms was driven more by a desire for privacy or a need to display wealth and status. Was it about a personal, emotional need for a space of one's own, or was it about a social, public need to show off one's riches? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. The idea of having a room just for yourself seems impossibly luxurious. You wouldn't have to worry about your sister's restless feet or the pig's snout. You could have a space that is truly yours. You remember a light joke you once heard about the Lord's bed being so big it needed a map to find the other side. It's an exaggeration, but it captures the scale of the difference between your world and theirs. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that these beds were often so tall that they required a small step stool to climb into. The height was another sign of luxury, elevating the sleeper away from cold drafts and the dirty floor. These beds were often willed to heirs as prized possessions, a testament to their value and importance. To you, a bed is just a place to sleep. But to the rich, it's a piece of furniture that holds memories, history, and status. It's a concept that feels foreign to you, but you can't deny the appeal of having a little more space, a little more privacy. You turn over, the straw rustling beneath you, and try to imagine what it would be like to sleep in a bed that doesn't smell of the barnyard. You lie on your straw sack, the air cool and still. The soft breathing of your family and the low hum of the cow are the only sounds. You're beginning to drift off when a vivid image flashes in your mind, a great, angry storm rolling in, the sky turning a dark, bruised purple. It feels so real that for a moment, you're not sure if you're asleep or awake. This is what you believe dreams are, not a product of your own mind, but a window into the future, a message from beyond. You pull the rough blanket tighter, wondering what the storm could mean for the harvest. A mainstream historical fact is that throughout the Middle Ages, dreams were almost universally considered to be prophetic or divine. People didn't see dreams as random subconscious meanderings. They were messages, warnings from God, omens of what was to come, or even temptations sent by demons. People would spend hours in the morning trying to interpret their dreams, often with the help of a local priest or a wise elder. Dream interpretation was a serious business, and there were entire books dedicated to the subject. A dream about a bountiful harvest could mean prosperity, while a dream about a falling tooth might be a bad sign for your family's health. You try to remember every detail of the storm, knowing that it might be a clue for the coming days. Historians still argue whether this belief in prophetic dreams was a source of comfort or anxiety. Did it give people a sense of control over their lives, or did it make them constantly worried about hidden meanings and bad omens? You'd probably say it's a bit of both. On one hand, it gives you something to think about, a puzzle to solve. On the other hand, a scary dream can leave you feeling restless and uneasy all day. There's a light joke that you often hear about someone who dreamt of a flock of angry geese and then avoided poultry for a week. It's a silly story, but it captures the serious nature of how dreams were taken. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people sometimes used specific prayers or rituals before bed to influence their dreams. They would ask for guidance or for a specific sign, hoping to receive a clear message in their sleep. Others would place certain herbs, like mugwort, under their pillow, believing they could help induce prophetic visions. You think about this, wondering if you should have done something to get a more positive dream, a dream about a sunny, peaceful day. You close your eyes again, trying to push the image of the storm out of your mind, hoping for a sweeter, calmer message to come to you as you finally drift back to sleep. The world of your dreams, you know, is just as important as the world you live in during the day. The image of the storm fades, replaced by the familiar weight of your body on the straw sack. As your mind settles, you remember your final duty before truly surrendering to sleep. You quietly sit up, your hands clasped together, and begin to recite the Lord's Prayer. The words are a soft whisper in the dark, a well-worn rhythm that has been a part of your life since you were a small child. This is not just a habit, it is an essential part of the nightly ritual, a final plea for protection in a world full of unseen dangers. A mainstream historical fact is that evening prayer was a crucial part of the daily routine for almost everyone in medieval Europe. The Catholic Church's influence was all-encompassing, and the day was structured around prayer, from dawn until dusk. Before bed, families would gather to say prayers together, giving thanks for the day and asking for a peaceful, safe night. This act was seen as a way of entrusting your soul to God, a moment of deep faith before entering the vulnerable state of sleep. For you, it's a way to quiet your mind and feel a sense of security. You repeat the familiar words, feeling a sense of calm spread through your body. Historians still argue whether this constant religious observance was a source of comfort for the masses or a tool of control for the church. Did it truly bring peace, or did it instill a sense of fear and obligation? You don't know the answer, but you can feel the warmth of the words and the sense of community in this shared act of faith. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling priest who said that a good prayer was better than a locked door. It's a silly saying, but it captures the very real fear of the dangers of the night, both seen and unseen. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that specific prayers were often said for different purposes. There were prayers to ward off nightmares, prayers to protect the home from thieves, and prayers to ensure a good morning. Your mother has a short prayer she says to Saint Christopher for protection on the roads, even though she has no plans to travel. It's a testament to the belief that every aspect of life, even the smallest moments, was guided by faith. You finish your prayers, your mind feeling a little clearer, a little calmer. You lay back down, pulling the rough blanket up to your chin, and feel the last vestiges of the day fall away. You are ready for sleep, and you know you are in good hands, your prayers are done, and you're nestled back into your rough, scratchy straw sack. You're just starting to drift off when you hear it, the soft, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer from a little down the way. It's late, long after sunset, but the work isn't done. You hear the low shouts of the town watchman making his rounds, a sound that is both a comfort and a reminder of the dangers lurking in the dark. For you, the night is a time for sleep, but for many others, it's a time for work. A mainstream historical fact is that the night wasn't a time of universal slumber. Many people had jobs that required them to be active after dark. Blacksmiths, bakers, and other artisans would often start their work in the middle of the night to have their goods ready for the morning market. The low hum of their work was a constant presence in the medieval town. Furthermore, the role of the night watchman was crucial. These men would patrol the streets, looking for fires, thieves, or other dangers. Their shouts and calls served as a reassuring presence, a sign that someone was keeping an eye on things while you slept. This was a critical public service, especially in a time before streetlights and police forces as we know them. Historians still argue whether the night was a time of more crime or a time of more productive labor. Was the darkness an invitation for mischief? Or did the lack of sunlight simply shift the workday for some? You'd probably say it was a mix of both. You hear stories of thieves and cutthroats who prowl the night, but you also know that your neighbor, the baker, gets up before dawn to bake the bread for the town. The night is a time of contrasts, of both danger and diligent work. A light joke you hear sometimes is that the baker's worst enemy isn't the thief, but the rooster who always crows too early. It's a silly saying, but it captures the very real struggle of those who had to work in the dark. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some cities, special bells were rung at night to signal the time. The watchman would call out the hours, and the bells would confirm it. This created a kind of nocturnal rhythm for the town, a sonic landscape that marked the passage of time even in the deepest darkness. You are lulled by these sounds, the clang of the hammer, the shouts of the watchman, the distant bells. It's a gentle reminder that the world is still turning, even while you are at rest. You pull your blanket up to your chin and let the sounds of the nocturnal world lull you into a deeper slumber. The sounds of the night, the distant blacksmith's hammer and the watchman's calls begin to fade into a peaceful hum as you drift into a light sleep. But as your mind settles, you find yourself in a different setting, a place of stark, disciplined routine. You are no longer in your family's crowded hall, but in the cold, echoing dormitory of a monastery. The air here is cleaner, filled with the scent of old stone and beeswax, but the atmosphere is one of strict, methodical order. The rhythmic toll of a bell pierces the silence, and you know exactly what it means. It's time for prayer. A mainstream historical fact is that the monastic lifestyle revolved around a strict, bell-driven sleep schedule that was completely different from that of the common folk. Monks and nuns divided the day and night into 8 periods of prayer, known as the Liturgy of the Hours. This meant they would wake up multiple times during the night, sometimes as early as 2 a.m., for a service called matins, and then return to bed only to be woken again for lauds at dawn. Their sleep was a series of short, broken intervals, meticulously timed by the tolling of the monastery bell. You can hear the soft rustle of other monks around you, all rising from their simple wooden beds, their minds and bodies accustomed to this ritual. Historians still argue whether this fragmented sleep schedule was a spiritual discipline or a form of sleep deprivation that made them more susceptible to religious visions and fervor. Did the broken sleep cycles make them more holy, or just more tired? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. The constant interruptions to sleep were a form of asceticism, a way of denying the body's natural needs for a higher purpose. But there's a light joke you remember hearing about a monk who overslept and missed matins, and the abbot's only punishment was to make him ring the bell for an extra minute the next night. It's a silly story, but it captures the serious nature of their routine. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the monastic bed was often a simple wooden board with a thin mattress of straw or wool. It was deliberately uncomfortable, a physical reminder of their vow of poverty and a way to avoid the sin of sloth. They slept in their habits, the woolen robes they wore during the day, so there was no fuss or frills to the process. You can feel the hardness of the board under your back, a stark contrast to the slightly more forgiving straw sack of your home. You shuffle into your spot, ready to begin the long, cold walk to the chapel for prayer. Your mind, even in this imagined state, is focused on the task at hand. Sleep is a secondary concern here. Prayer is the primary one. The cold, hard bed of the monastery fades, and you are back on your familiar straw sack. You've been asleep for a few hours. The night is dark, and the fire is completely gone. You stir, not because of a noise, but because your body has decided it's time to be awake. You sit up, your senses alert, and you feel wide awake, ready to do something. You look around the room, seeing others in the same state. Your father is tending to the dying embers. Your mother is sitting up quietly, and your sister is whispering a prayer. This is not insomnia. This is the first sleep ending, and the second sleep is yet to come. A mainstream historical fact is that for much of human history, people didn't sleep in one continuous block of 7 or 8 hours like we do today. They practiced what is now known as segmented sleep or biphasic sleep. This involved a first sleep that lasted for a few hours, followed by a period of wakefulness in the middle of the night, and then a second sleep until dawn. This was a completely normal and accepted part of the nightly routine. During this wakeful period, people would do all sorts of things, tending to the fire, visiting with neighbors, doing small chores, or simply lying in bed and reflecting. You feel a sense of calm, knowing that this wakeful period is not a sign of a problem, but a natural rhythm of life. Historians still argue whether this segmented sleep pattern was a product of the lack of artificial light or a natural biological pattern that we've since trained ourselves out of. Was it the light of the fire that allowed people to be productive at night? Or was it a deeper, more primal rhythm that has been lost to modern society? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. The lack of electricity and the need to be productive meant that this wakeful period was not wasted. You remember a light joke your father once told you about a man who, during his second sleep, dreamt he was a baker and woke up with the smell of fresh bread. It's a silly story, but it captures the sense of a world that is still active, even in the middle of the night. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that this period of nocturnal wakefulness was often considered the best time for contemplation and creative thought. Without the distractions of the day, people believed that the mind was clearest and most receptive to new ideas. Poets would write, scholars would study, and mystics would pray during this time. You lie there, listening to the soft sounds of your family, your mind a quiet canvas. You think about the events of the day, the people you met, the tasks you completed. It's a peaceful time, a pause in the middle of the night. You feel a gentle wave of sleepiness begin to creep back over you, and you know it's time for the second sleep. You settle back down, ready to drift off again until the first light of dawn. You've just emerged from the first sleep, feeling surprisingly refreshed despite the dark hour. The house is a low hum of activity. Your father is poking at the fire, coaxing a few last sparks into a faint glow. Your mother is sitting up, her hands busy with a small piece of mending. Across the room, your sister and brother are whispering, a hushed conversation that sounds like a game. This wakeful period, you realize, is not a time of solitude, but a time of quiet. Midnight socializing. A mainstream historical fact is that the nocturnal wakefulness period of segmented sleep was a time for social and domestic activities. People would use this time to attend to chores, visit neighbors, or engage in quiet conversation with their family. It was a time for intimacy and connection that wasn't possible during the busy, noisy daylight hours. Without the distractions of work and the demands of the day, people could talk, share secrets, and simply be with each other. You can see the faint smile on your mother's face as she listens to her children's quiet chatter, her needle moving with practiced ease. This time is a cherished part of the night, a quiet pause that feels both sacred and mundane. Historians still argue whether this midnight socializing was a genuine expression of community or a practical necessity born of the lack of other entertainment. Was it a time for heartfelt connection, or was it simply a way to pass the time until the second sleep arrived? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. It's a time for quiet reflection, but it's also a time for simple, practical tasks. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who, during his midnight wakefulness, decided to clean the entire house and woke up the next morning to a completely different room. It's an exaggeration, of course, but it captures the spirit of this time. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that this period was also considered an ideal time for courtship and romance. Without the prying eyes of the community, young couples could steal a few quiet moments together. A suitor might come to a young woman's window, or a couple might meet in a quiet corner of the house. This was a brief, precious window of privacy in a world where it was almost non-existent. You think about this. A small smile on your face. You feel the warmth of the fire, the quiet company of your family, and the peaceful rhythm of the night. This wakeful period is not a burden, it is a gift. You feel a gentle wave of sleepiness begin to creep back over you, and you know it's time for the second sleep. You settle back down, ready to drift off again until the first light of dawn. You've had your moment of midnight socializing and are now ready for your second sleep. You settle back down on your scratchy straw mattress, but you find yourself shifting and turning, unable to get truly comfortable. You try lying on your side, then on your back, then curling into a ball. This isn't just about the lumps in the straw, it's a reflection of the bizarre and often uncomfortable sleeping positions that were common in the medieval world. You remember seeing your grandfather, a stern, unbending man, sleeping almost completely upright, propped against a wall. A mainstream historical fact is that people in the Middle Ages did not always sleep in a prone or horizontal position. Many people, particularly the elderly or those in positions of authority, would sleep in a semi-upright or even a fully seated position. This was often believed to be a healthier way to sleep, as it was thought to aid digestion and prevent certain illnesses. It was also seen as a sign of piety and readiness, a way of being always prepared to rise and meet the day. This is a far cry from the modern idea of a bed as a place of complete relaxation and comfort. You try to mimic your grandfather's position, propping yourself up with a roll of old wool, but it just feels stiff and unnatural. Historians still argue whether this practice was a genuine health belief or a cultural preference. Was it a medical practice, or was it a social statement? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a lord who slept so upright he looked like he was still ruling his kingdom in his sleep. It's a silly image, but it captures the very real sense of authority that was attached to this style of sleeping. A bed was not just for rest, it was a stage for life. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that for many people, especially travellers and soldiers, a bed wasn't even a sack of straw. It was a hard, wooden bench or even a cold, stone floor. People became incredibly adept at sleeping in all kinds of uncomfortable positions and locations. A traveller might sleep curled up in a corner of a tavern, his head on his cloak, while a soldier might sleep with his back against a tree, his sword at his side. The ability to sleep anywhere, anytime, was a valuable skill. You think about this, and the lumpy straw sack suddenly seems like a luxurious, soft feather bed. You lie back down, giving up on the upright position, and let the sounds of the night lull you into a deeper slumber. A gentle reminder that comfort is a relative thing. You've finally settled into a more comfortable position, but your mind is still active, a little on edge. The gentle sounds of your family and the distant cow are a comfort, but they don't entirely drown out the other noises of the night. You hear the sharp, sudden cry of a cat, followed by a rustling in the bushes outside. A cold shiver runs down your spine. The darkness, you know, is not empty. It's filled with dangers, both real and imagined, that make a peaceful night's sleep a precious thing. A mainstream historical fact is that the medieval night was a time of genuine danger. There were no streetlights, and the streets were poorly policed. Thieves, cutthroats, and wild animals were a real threat. A fire could start and burn down an entire town with terrifying speed. People were wary of leaving their homes after dark, and doors and windows were barred with heavy wood and iron. The watchman's cry, which you heard earlier, was a vital part of keeping the town safe, but it was by no means a guarantee. You pull your blanket up to your chin, trying to make yourself as small as possible, as if that could protect you from the things that might be lurking outside. Historians still argue whether the fear of the dark was a result of genuine dangers or a product of superstition and folklore. Were people more afraid of thieves, or of ghosts and demons? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who was so afraid of ghosts he slept with his eyes open. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real fear that permeated the medieval psyche. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often placed specific symbols or items near their beds to ward off evil spirits. A cross, a sprig of a certain herb, or even a horseshoe might be placed on a wall or under a pillow, a small act of magic to ensure a safe night. You think about this, and you remember the small, carved wooden cross your mother placed above your sleeping spot. You touch it, a small, reassuring gesture in the darkness. You know that it may not be a perfect solution, but it's a comfort. You close your eyes and let the sounds of the night recede into a hum, a gentle reminder that the world is still turning, even while you are at rest. The fear of the night's dangers begins to recede as a wave of deep sleepiness washes over you. You're settling into your second sleep, and as you do, your mind wanders. You begin to think about what sleep actually is. Is it a little death, A time when your soul leaves your body to wander, or is it something more tangible, something physical that happens inside you? You remember a conversation you overheard between a traveling physician and a priest, and you try to recall their words. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval science had a very different understanding of what sleep was. The dominant theory was based on the concept of the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. It was believed that during the day, the heat of the sun and the activities of the body would cause vapours to rise from the stomach to the brain. Sleep was the body's way of cooling down and allowing these vapours to settle back down. Insomnia was thought to be caused by an excess of these vapours, which kept the brain too hot to sleep. To a medieval person, sleep was a physical process of rebalancing the body's essential fluids. You can almost feel your own vapours settling, a gentle, cooling sensation in your mind. Historians still argue whether this humoral theory of sleep was a genuine attempt at scientific understanding or a system of thought that simply validated existing beliefs about health and the body. Was it a primitive form of medicine or a sophisticated form of philosophical musing? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who couldn't sleep, and the doctor told him to eat a lot of cold food to cool his head. The man replied that he was still awake, but at least he had a full stomach. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of trial and error that went into medieval medicine. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that a person's personality could be determined by how they slept. A person who tossed and turned a lot was thought to have too much choleric humour or yellow bile, making them hot-tempered and quick to anger. A person who slept deeply and peacefully was thought to have a good balance of humours. You try to lie as still as possible, hoping that your peaceful sleep will signal to the world that you are a well-balanced and calm person. You close your eyes and let the imagined humours of your body settle into a state of peaceful rest, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the body is still at work. The vapours of your mind are settling, and you are drifting peacefully now, your body finally at rest on the scratchy straw sack. As you lie there, you remember the day, and you recall a visit your family had earlier. The visiting family, friends from the next village, were seated not on chairs, but on the edge of your family's bed, a large wooden platform that your family had only recently acquired. The bed was not a private sanctuary, but a social hub, a place where business was conducted and meals were shared. A mainstream historical fact is that the bed was far more than just a place to sleep in the medieval world. It was a piece of multifunctional furniture, serving as a dining table, a meeting place, and a social centre for the household. In a time when furniture was scarce and expensive, the bed was often the most important piece in the house. People would sit on the edge of the bed to talk, eat, and play games. The bed was not a place of solitude, but a place of community. You can almost feel the weight of your friends on the edge of the bed, a gentle pressure that feels both intimate and communal. Historians still argue whether this use of the bed was a sign of practicality or a reflection of the more communal and less private nature of medieval society. Was it a matter of necessity, or was it a cultural norm that we've long since forgotten? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling merchant about a man who was so poor he had to eat his dinner on his bed and his breakfast in his sleep. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of practicality that was attached to the bed. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some wealthy households, beds were so grand that they had their own special furniture, like small tables that could be placed on the bed for dining. These beds were like small, self-contained worlds, with everything a person could need within arm's reach. This is a far cry from your humble straw sack, but you can see the appeal of having a space that is both for rest and for life. You close your eyes and let the imagined hum of conversation and laughter from the edge of the bed lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that the bed is not just for sleep, but for living. You are drifting deeper into sleep, your mind a quiet river flowing through the darkness. The sounds of the household are a distant hum, and you are feeling the gentle pull of slumber. You remember a day when you were feeling particularly restless, unable to find a moment of peace. Your grandmother, a woman wise in the ways of the earth, had handed you a small cup. The liquid inside was dark, warm, and smelled of something earthy and strange. It was a sleepy herbal remedy. a concoction meant to coax you into a peaceful slumber. A mainstream historical fact is that people in the Middle Ages relied heavily on natural, herbal remedies to induce sleep. The belief in the medicinal properties of plants was widespread, and every village had its herbalist or wise woman who knew which plants could calm the mind and soothe the body. Herbs like valerian, chamomile, and poppy were commonly used, often brewed into a tea or a thick, potent-smelling drink. These remedies were seen as a gentle way to restore the balance of the body and mind. A stark contrast to modern sleeping pills. You can almost taste the bitter, earthy flavor of the drink, and you can feel the gentle, sleepy wave it sent through your body. Historians still argue whether these herbal remedies were genuinely effective or if their power was purely psychological. Did the herbs truly have a calming effect, or was it the belief in their power that made them work? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling peddler about a man who drank a tea made from the wrong herb and was up all night, dancing in his sleep. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of trial and error that went into medieval medicine. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that certain herbs could not only help you sleep but also help you have specific types of dreams. A tea made from mugwort, for instance, was said to help you have prophetic dreams, while a tea made from dandelion was said to help you have dreams of your loved ones. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural world to influence the world of your dreams. You close your eyes and let the gentle memory of the herbal tea lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the body is still at work. You've finally settled into a deep, peaceful slumber, but it doesn't last. A sudden, sharp noise from outside startles you. It's the loud, drunken shouting of a group of men staggering back from the tavern. The noise is followed by the clatter of a wooden cart rumbling down the muddy street, its wheels groaning under the weight of some unseen cargo. This isn't the quiet, tranquil night you hoped for. It's a chaotic symphony of nocturnal noise pollution. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval towns and cities were far from quiet at night. Without the constant hum of electricity and traffic, every sound was amplified. The sounds of late-night revelers, the calls of the night watchman, the barks of stray dogs, and the clatter of carts were all part of the nightly soundscape. Even in the countryside, the sounds of wolves howling or the rustling of a wild boar in the woods could break the silence. The night was a noisy, unpredictable time, and a good night's sleep was often a battle against the elements and the inhabitants of the world around you. You pull the rough blanket over your head, trying to block out the noise, but it's no use. Historians still argue whether this constant noise was a source of stress or a comforting sign of a bustling, active community. Was the noise a nuisance, or was it a reminder that the world was still alive and well? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a man who moved to the countryside to escape the city noise, only to be kept awake by the sound of a rooster who never knew when to stop. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense that noise was an unavoidable part of life. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that certain noises at night were signs of supernatural activity. The sound of a bird repeatedly tapping on a window was said to be an omen of death, while the sound of a mysterious bell tolling was said to signal the presence of a ghost. This was a way of making sense of the random, unpredictable sounds of the night, a way of giving them meaning. You hear a loud, sharp crash from the street, and for a moment, your heart beats a little faster. You close your eyes and let the chaos of the night recede into a gentle, sleepy hum, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest slumber, the world of the living is still at work. The raucous sounds of the street begin to fade, absorbed by the thick stone walls of the house. You're finally drifting into a deeper sleep, the noise transforming into a distant, gentle hum. You remember your mother's words as she tucked you in, her voice a soft whisper in the dark. Sleep is a little death, my child. It is a time when you trust yourself to God, a test of your faith. This idea, that sleep is a religious act, is not just a passing thought, it is a core belief that shapes the way you think about rest. A mainstream historical fact is that in the medieval worldview, sleep was not simply a biological necessity but a profound spiritual experience. It was seen as a temporary separation of the soul from the body, a moment of profound vulnerability, People believed that during sleep, the soul might wander and even be tempted by demons. To counter this, it was crucial to say prayers before bed, to commit one's soul to God's care. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues the simple act of lying down with a deep sense of purpose and meaning. You can feel the weight of this belief, a sense of quiet reverence for the act of sleep itself. Historians still argue whether this view of sleep was a source of profound spiritual comfort or a source of deep-seated anxiety. Did it make people feel safe in God's hands? Or did it make them afraid of what might happen to their soul in the night? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling priest about a man who was so afraid of his soul wandering at night that he slept with a string tied to his toe. Just in case, it's a silly story. But it captures the very real sense of fear and superstition that surrounded the idea of sleep. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that a person's dreams could be a form of divine communication. A dream about a saint or an angel was seen as a sign of God's favor, while a dream about a demon or a serpent was seen as a sign of temptation. This belief made the act of interpreting dreams a crucial part of the nightly ritual. You close your eyes and let the imagined presence of your guardian angel lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the spirit is still at work. The fear of a wandering soul and the comforting thought of a guardian angel are now fading into a soft haze. You're settling deeper into sleep, feeling the weight of the day lift from your shoulders. You remember the last thing you did before you laid down tonight. You drank a small cup of something warm. It was not a herbal remedy, but a simple drink, a small ritual to mark the end of the day. It's what your father calls a nightcap. A mainstream historical fact is that the practice of having a nightcap, a small drink before bed, was a common ritual in the medieval world. Though it wasn't always alcohol, it could be a simple warm milk with honey, a spiced wine, or a small bit of mead. The purpose was not to get drunk, but to warm the body and calm the mind, a gentle way of signaling to the body that the day was over. The word nightcap itself is a bit of a light joke, referring to the woolen cap that people would wear to bed to keep their heads warm. You can almost feel the warmth of the spiced wine in your belly, a gentle, soothing feeling that helps you relax. Historians still argue whether the nightcap was a genuine medical practice or a social custom. Was it a way of calming the body, or was it simply a pleasant ritual that people enjoyed? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who drank so many nightcaps he woke up in the morning thinking he was a different person. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of relaxation that was attached to the nightcap. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some wealthy households, the nightcap was served in a specific, ornate goblet that was used for no other purpose. This was a way of making the ritual feel more special, more ceremonial. This is a far cry from your simple wooden cup, but you can see the appeal of having a special vessel for this special time. You close your eyes and let the gentle warmth of the nightcap lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the body is still at work. The warmth of the nightcap has faded, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. But you remember a time not long ago when this peace was elusive. You would lie awake for hours, your mind a whirlwind of thoughts, your body a restless coil of tension. This feeling, this struggle, is what people call insomnia, and it was a real problem in the medieval world, just as it is today. You recall trying everything to get to sleep, a frustrating, hopeless feeling that you never want to experience again. A mainstream historical fact is that people in the Middle Ages had a number of bizarre remedies for insomnia. One of the most common was a poultice made from lettuce, which was believed to have sedative properties. Another was a pillow stuffed with hops or lavender, the scents of which were thought to calm the mind. People also believed that a change in diet, such as avoiding certain foods or eating more bread, could help. These remedies were often a mix of folk wisdom and early medical theory, a desperate attempt to find a solution to a problem that was not well understood. You remember the taste of the lettuce poultice, a strange, bitter taste that you hoped would work, but didn't. Historians still argue whether these remedies were genuinely effective or if their power was purely psychological. Did the lettuce poultice truly have a calming effect, Or was it the belief in its power that made it work? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling peddler about a man who couldn't sleep, so he was told to count sheep. The man replied that he was so tired he fell asleep before he could count them all. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of desperation that comes with insomnia. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that insomnia was caused by an evil spirit or a demon that was keeping you awake. To combat this, they would place a small, blessed object, like a holy relic or a sprig of a blessed plant, under their pillow. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the sacred to fight against the profane. You close your eyes and let the gentle memory of a peaceful night's sleep lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the spirit is still at work. The memory of insomnia fades, and you're now in a state of deep, peaceful slumber. As you lie there, you feel a gentle warmth spreading through your body, a feeling of comfort and safety. You remember a bitter winter night, a night so cold that the water in the bucket froze solid. The cold seeped into the very bones of the house, and you shivered under your thin blanket. But your mother, ever resourceful, came to your rescue. She had a strange, heavy object in her hands, a heated stone. A mainstream historical fact is that people in the Middle Ages had a number of ingenious ways to warm their beds on a cold night. One of the most common was the practice of bed warming, where a stone or a metal pot filled with hot coals or hot water would be placed under the covers to warm the sheets and blankets. This was a crucial practice in a time without central heating, a way of creating a small, warm sanctuary in the middle of a freezing house. The warmth of the stone or pot would last for a few hours, just enough to get you to sleep. You can almost feel the gentle, radiating warmth of the stone, a feeling of pure comfort and safety. Historians still argue whether this practice was a simple act of survival or a luxury reserved for the more affluent. Was it a necessity for everyone, or was it a sign of a well-to-do family? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling minstrel about a man who was so poor he had to warm his bed with his own body heat, which he claimed was a lot more work. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of ingenuity that was required to survive a medieval winter. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that a bed warmed with a heated stone could also have medicinal properties. A stone heated with a fire made from a specific type of wood, for instance, was said to cure a cough or a fever. This was a form of folk medicine, a way of using the natural world to heal the body. You close your eyes and let the gentle warmth of the imagined heated stone lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the body is still at work. The memory of the heated stone's warmth fades, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. As you drift, your mind wanders to a time when you were away from home. You were traveling with your father to a distant market, a journey that took many days. The nights were a challenge. There were no inns, no beds, and no cozy straw sacks. You had to find a place to sleep on the road, a place that was safe, if not comfortable. You remember the smell of hay and the low rustle of mice in the darkness. A mainstream historical fact is that for travelers, pilgrims, and merchants, sleeping rough was a common reality. A bed was not a given, and a traveler might have to sleep in a barn, a hayloft, or even under a hedge. This was a challenging existence, and it required a certain toughness and resilience. The bed, if you can call it that, was a pile of hay or straw, often shared with animals and other travelers. The threat of thieves, wild animals, and the cold were constant companions. You can almost feel the scratchy hay on your skin and the cold earth beneath you, a harsh reality that makes your home feel like a palace. Historians still argue whether this nomadic lifestyle was a source of freedom or a source of hardship. Was it a chance to see the world, or was it a difficult, dangerous existence? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling minstrel about a man who was so used to sleeping in barns that he couldn't fall asleep in a real bed without the smell of hay. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of adaptation that was required to survive on the road. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that sleeping in a barn with certain animals could bring you good luck. Sleeping with a cow, for instance, was said to bring prosperity, while sleeping with a horse was said to bring good fortune on the road. This was a form of folk magic, a way of finding comfort and hope in a difficult situation. You close your eyes and let the gentle rustle of the hay and the soft breathing of the animals lull you into a deeper slumber. A gentle reminder that even on the road, a kind of comfort can be found. The memory of sleeping in the barn fades, and you are back on your familiar straw sack. The warmth of your home, a comforting presence. But as you drift, you remember a different kind of darkness. It was a time when a sickness, a plague, swept through the land, taking with it people you knew and loved. The nights were a time of fear, a time when you went to sleep not knowing if you would wake up healthy or if you would be the next one to fall ill. A mainstream historical fact is that throughout the Middle Ages, plagues and epidemics were a constant threat. The unsanitary conditions, the lack of medical knowledge, and the close quarters in which people lived made them ripe for the spread of disease. The night was a time of particular fear, as people would go to bed with a slight cough or a fever and wake up in a much worse state. The idea of a peaceful, restful sleep was often a fantasy, replaced by a constant, low-level anxiety. You remember the hushed whispers of your parents, the fear in their eyes, and the quiet prayers they said before bed. Historians still argue whether the fear of the plague was a greater source of psychological stress than the actual physical threat. Did the fear of the disease make people more susceptible to it? Or was it a realistic and necessary response to a grave danger? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling priest about a man who was so afraid of the plague he wore a mask made of garlic and herbs to bed, and no one could come near him. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of fear and desperation that people felt. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often believed that a dream about a sickness was a prophetic warning. A dream about a black cat, for instance, was said to be a sign of a coming plague, while a dream about a blooming rose was said to be a sign of good health. This was a way of making sense of the random, unpredictable nature of the disease, a way of giving it meaning. You close your eyes and let the gentle memory of a healthy day's work lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the darkest of times, a kind of peace can be found. The fear of the plague and the memory of a healthy day's work fade into a gentle hum. You are drifting now, your body finally at peace. As you drift, your mind wanders to the bed itself, not as a place of rest, but as a place of profound human events. You remember your mother's stories of your birth, which happened right here, on this very spot. You remember the time your father was ill, and he lay on this very straw sack, a small circle of light cast by a candle illuminating his pale face. The bed, you realize, is not just for sleeping. It is the stage for life's most dramatic moments. A mainstream historical fact is that in the medieval world, the bed was the center of life's great cycle. It was the place of birth, sickness, and death. Women gave birth in their beds. Surrounded by family and midwives, the bed was where the sick would lie, often for weeks, as their families nursed them back to health or watched them die. The bed was also where the final rites were given, where a person would breathe their last. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues the simple act of lying down with a deep sense of purpose and meaning. The bed is a witness to it all, a silent observer of the most intimate moments of a person's life. Historians still argue whether this centralization of life's events in the bed was a source of comfort or a source of trauma. Did it make people feel more connected to the cycle of life, or did it make the bed a place of fear and sadness? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who was so attached to his bed that he insisted on being born and married in it. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of reverence that was attached to the bed. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that beds were often willed to heirs with very specific instructions. A bed might be left to a son, but with the condition that it be used only for sleeping and not for social gatherings. Or a bed might be left to a daughter, but with the condition that she use it to give birth to her first child. This was a way of ensuring that the bed's rich history and meaning would be carried on. You close your eyes and let the gentle memory of your mother's stories and your father's recovery lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the body is still at work. The memories of birth, sickness, and death on your family's bed fade, and you are now drifting in a peaceful, dreamlike state, your mind, however, begins to wander to a different kind of bed, a different kind of life. You're in a great stone castle, and you are surrounded by the opulence of royalty. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfume and roasted meats. This is the bed of a king or a queen, and you realize that their bedtime was anything but simple. A mainstream historical fact is that the bedtime of royalty was a public affair, a spectacle of ceremony and ritual. A king or a queen didn't simply go to bed, they were put to bed by a retinue of servants and courtiers. The process could involve undressing, bathing, and even a small meal, all of which was done in front of an audience. This was a way of reinforcing the king's power and status, a public performance that took place even in the most private of moments. The bed itself was a throne, a stage where the king could display his power. You can almost feel the weight of the silk sheets and the soft, downy pillows, a stark contrast to your own rough straw sack. Historians still argue whether this public bedtime ritual was a source of comfort for the king or a form of social control. Did the king feel safe and protected by the presence of his courtiers? Or was he a prisoner of his own status? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a king who was so used to having people undress him that he once forgot how to do it himself. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of ceremony that was attached to the royal bed. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the king's bed was often a place of business. Courtiers would come to the bed to ask for favours, to report on the day's events, or to discuss matters of state. The bed was not a place of rest, it was an extension of the throne, a place where the king's power was never-ending. This is a far cry from your own bed, which is a place of solitude and rest. You close your eyes, and let the imagined hum of courtiers and servants lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of power and status is still at work. The grandeur of the royal bed fades, and you are back in the familiar darkness of your home. You're drifting now, and a soft, humming sound from your childhood comes to you. It is your mother's voice, singing a lullaby to your younger sister. The tune is gentle and lilting, but the words, you realize, are a little morbid. They speak of a cold wind, a lost child, and a benevolent but sombre spirit. This is the medieval lullaby, a song that is both comforting and a little bit unsettling. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval lullabies were often far from the sweet, gentle songs we know today. They were often a mix of folklore, superstition, and religious tales. They could be a form of prayer, a way of warding off evil spirits, or a way of teaching children about the dangers of the world. The lyrics could be a warning against mischievous fairies, a story about a lost soul, or a prayer for a child's safe passage through the night. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues the simple act of singing to a child with a deep sense of purpose and meaning. The lullaby is not just a song, it's a piece of wisdom, a cultural touchstone. Historians still argue whether these morbid lullabies were a source of comfort or a source of fear for children. Did the lullabies make children feel safe, or did they instill a sense of fear and anxiety? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a child who was so afraid of the lullaby his mother sang that he insisted on sleeping with his head under the covers. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of unease that could come from these songs. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some lullabies were believed to have magical properties. A lullaby sung with a specific melody or a specific set of words was said to be able to cure a fever or a bad cough. This was a form of folk medicine, a way of using music to heal the body. You close your eyes and let the gentle, lilting melody of your mother's lullaby lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the spirit is still at work. The haunting melody of the medieval lullaby fades, and you are now in a deep, peaceful slumber. But your rest is not entirely unbroken. A sudden, sharp noise from across the room startles you. It's your brother, his body lurching in his sleep, his eyes wide and unseeing. He's talking, but the words are a jumble of nonsense, a language you don't recognize. This is what people call sleepwalking or night terrors, and you know what it means. It's a sign that something is wrong. A mainstream historical fact is that in the medieval world, sleepwalking and night terrors were not seen as a medical condition, but as a sign of demonic possession or a spiritual sickness. People believed that during sleep, the soul could leave the body and wander, and if it was not strong enough, a demon could take its place. A person who was sleepwalking was seen as a vessel for a dark, malevolent force. The only way to cure them was through exorcism, prayer, and other religious rituals. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues a simple medical condition with a deep sense of fear and danger. You remember the fear in your mother's eyes as she watched your brother, a look of profound worry that he was not in control of his own body. Historians still argue whether this belief in demonic possession was a source of comfort or a source of fear for the families of the afflicted. Did it give them a way of understanding a phenomenon that they couldn't explain? Or did it make them afraid of their own family members? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling priest about a man who was so afraid of his wife's night terrors that he slept with a bucket of holy water by his bed. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of fear and superstition that surrounded these events. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often used specific herbs or prayers to ward off night terrors. A sprig of St. John's wort placed under a pillow, for instance, was said to keep demons away, while a specific prayer to a patron saint of sleep was said to calm the mind. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural and the sacred to fight against the profane. You close your eyes and let the gentle hum of your own peaceful slumber lull you into a deeper rest. A gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the spirit is still at work. The fear of demonic possession and the memory of your brother's night terrors fade, and you are now in a deep, peaceful slumber. As you drift, your mind wanders to the sounds of the night. You're hearing a new sound now, a low, rumbling noise that smells of something unpleasant. It's the sound of a cart, a large wooden vessel, being pulled by a horse. But this isn't a normal cart. It's the cart of the night soil collectors, the unsung heroes of the medieval city. A mainstream historical fact is that in a world without modern sanitation, the job of collecting and disposing of human waste, or night soil, was crucial, if not a little gross. These collectors, often called gong farmers or rakers, would go through the city at night, emptying the chamber pots and privies of the city's inhabitants. The job was often done at night to avoid the smell and the sight of the work, and the waste was then taken outside the city walls to be used as fertilizer. This was a critical public service, but it was also a low-status, often dangerous job, as the workers were exposed to disease and the general unpleasantness of their work. You can almost smell the unpleasant aroma of the cart, a scent that is both disgusting and a sign of a functioning city. Historians still argue whether this system of waste disposal was a sign of a sophisticated urban society or a major source of disease and pollution. Did the night soil collectors prevent the spread of disease, or did they simply move it around? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who was so poor he had to sell his soul to the devil, and the devil's only condition was that the man had to be a night soil collector for a day. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of disgust and social stigma that was attached to the job. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some cities, the night soil collectors had their own guild and their own set of rules and regulations. They had to be licensed, and they were often given special privileges, like the right to carry a weapon, to protect them from thieves and other dangers. This was a way of giving a sense of order and professionalism to a job that was often seen as dirty and disorganized. You close your eyes and let the gentle rumble of the cart and the distant shouts of the collectors lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the city is still at work. The rumbling of the night soil collector's cart fades into the distance, and you are left in the profound silence of your second sleep. You are drifting peacefully now, but your mind wanders to another kind of journey that takes place in the middle of the night. You remember a story your grandmother told you about a woman who, in the middle of the night, would leave her warm bed and go on a pilgrimage. This was a secret, silent journey, a private act of faith that took place in the deepest hours of the night, A mainstream historical fact is that for many people, the night was a time for private, religious devotion. A person might leave their bed to go to a nearby church or a shrine, to pray or to light a candle. This was a personal, often secretive, act of piety, a way of connecting with God without the prying eyes of the community. The night, with its silence and its darkness, was seen as a time of profound spiritual significance. It was a time when the world was asleep, and the only one awake was God. You can almost feel the cold stone of the church floor on your knees, a feeling of deep humility and reverence. Historians still argue whether these nocturnal pilgrimages were a genuine expression of faith or a form of social escapism. Was it a way of connecting with God, or was it a way of escaping the drudgery and the noise of the day? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling priest about a man who went on a nocturnal pilgrimage to a nearby shrine, only to find the priest there, also on a pilgrimage. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of quiet, personal devotion that was a part of medieval life. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that a pilgrimage made at night was more powerful than a pilgrimage made during the day. The darkness and the silence were seen as a sign of a deeper, more profound faith. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural world to amplify the sacred. You close your eyes and let the gentle memory of the silent, nocturnal pilgrimage lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the spirit is still at work. The memory of the silent, nocturnal pilgrimage fades, and you are now in a deep, peaceful slumber. But your rest is not entirely unbroken. A sharp, clear sound from outside breaks the silence. It's the loud, rhythmic shouts of the town watchman, a sound that is both a comfort and a reminder of the world outside. The watchmen, you know, are not just walking the streets, they are performing a ritual, a changing of the guard that happens in the middle of the night. A mainstream historical fact is that the night watch was a vital part of urban life in the Middle Ages. The watchmen, often volunteers or low-ranking officials, would patrol the streets looking for fires, thieves, and other dangers. But their job was also ceremonial. They would call out the hours, and they would perform a ritual changing of the guard, a formal handover of responsibility from one group of watchmen to the next. This was a way of reinforcing the idea of a secure, well-ordered city, even in the deepest hours of the night. You can almost hear the rhythmic, formal shouts of the watchmen, a sound that is both a comfort and a sign of a functioning city. Historians still argue whether the night watch was more effective as a deterrent or as a form of social control. Did the presence of the watchman actually prevent crime, or did it simply make people feel safer? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a watchman who was so loud that he woke up the entire town, and the people had to ask him to be a little quieter. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of annoyance and comfort that was attached to the night watch. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the watchman would often carry a lantern with a specific colour or symbol on it, a way of identifying themselves to the townspeople. This was a form of visual communication, a way of letting people know that a watchman was nearby without having to shout it out. This was a way of giving a sense of order and professionalism to a job that was often seen as a bit disorganized. You close your eyes and let the rhythmic shouts of the watchman lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the city is still at work. The rhythmic shouts of the watchman fade into the distance, and you are now in a deep, peaceful slumber. But it doesn't last. A new sound, a sharp, clear, and utterly annoying sound, breaks the silence. It's the sound of a rooster, a sound that is a mix of a crow and a shriek. It's too early for dawn, but the rooster, has his own schedule. This is the most ancient and most annoying alarm clock in history. A mainstream historical fact is that the rooster was the most common and most reliable way of telling time in the pre-industrial world. Without clocks or watches, people relied on the sounds of nature and the routines of their animals to know when to wake up. The rooster's crow was a sign that dawn was approaching, and it was a signal for everyone to begin their day. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues a simple animal with a deep sense of purpose and meaning. The rooster is not just a bird, he is a timekeeper, a social institution. You can almost feel the frustration in your body, the desire to throw something at the rooster. Historians still argue whether the rooster was a source of comfort or a source of irritation. Was it a gentle reminder of the natural rhythm of the day, or was it a rude, jarring interruption to your sleep? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a man who was so annoyed by his neighbor's rooster that he tried to teach it to crow at noon. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of frustration that was attached to the rooster. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some people believed that a rooster's crow had magical properties. A crow at midnight, for instance, was said to ward off evil spirits and bring good luck. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural world to fight against the profane. You close your eyes and let the gentle, rhythmic crow of the rooster lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the city is still at work. The rooster's crow fades, and you're now in that hazy state between sleep and wakefulness. The first light of dawn is creeping through the small, unglazed window, painting the room in a soft, grey light. You hear the rustle of your parents stirring, a gentle signal that it's time to get up. The day is beginning, and your work is waiting. You feel the cold air on your face as you pull back the rough woolen blanket and sit up, your body stiff from the hard floor and the long night. A mainstream historical fact is that in the medieval world, the day began before dawn. The morning commute, if you can call it that, was a long, cold walk to the fields, the market, or the workshop. The work began with the first light and ended with the last. This was a life dictated by the sun, a life without the luxury of sleeping in. The early morning was a time of quiet industry, of people preparing for the day ahead. You can almost feel the cold morning air on your face, the dampness of the grass under your bare feet, and the sense of purpose that comes with a new day. Historians still argue whether this early start was a source of hardship or a source of strength. Did the early mornings make people feel more connected to the rhythm of nature, or did it simply make them tired and overworked? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a man who was so lazy he had to be woken up by a rooster that was trained to sing in his ear. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of social expectation that was attached to an early start. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often had a small morning ritual to prepare for the day. A small prayer, a quick drink of water, or a specific movement of the body was a way of welcoming the new day. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the sacred to fight against the profane. You close your eyes and let the gentle light of the dawn lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the city is still at work. The rooster's crow and the morning light are now distant memories, and you are drifting back into a gentle, sleepy state. Your mind, however, is not focused on the morning, but on the evening before. You remember the sound of the drunks from the tavern, a sound that you thought was just noise, but you now realize was a sign of a vibrant, active nightlife. This is the medieval city after dark, a place of revelry, music, and social connection. A mainstream historical fact is that while the common folk were often asleep in their single-room homes, the taverns and public houses of the medieval city were buzzing with activity. People would gather to drink, to sing, to tell stories, and to gamble. This was a social world that came alive after dark, a place of entertainment and community. It was a place where social hierarchies were sometimes blurred, where a farmer might drink with a merchant, and a soldier might talk to a priest. The tavern was a social institution, a place where people could escape the drudgery of their daily lives and connect with others. You can almost hear the low hum of conversation, the clinking of tankards, and the loud, boisterous laughter. Historians still argue whether this nightlife was a source of social cohesion or a source of social disorder. Did the taverns bring people together, or did they lead to more fights and crime? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a man who drank so much ale he thought he was a king and tried to tax everyone in the tavern. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of chaos and revelry that was attached to the tavern. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some cities, the taverns had their own rules and regulations. A person who was too drunk might be banned from the tavern for a day, and a person who started a fight might be fined. This was a way of giving a sense of order and professionalism to a place that was often seen as a bit disorganized. This was a way of making the tavern a safe and enjoyable place for everyone. You close your eyes and let the gentle hum of the tavern and the distant shouts of laughter lull you into a deeper slumber. A gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the city is still at work. The sounds of the tavern fade, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. Your mind, however, is not focused on the past, but on the future. You're thinking about your clothes, the rough woolen tunic and trousers you wear every day. You remember the time you had a small hole in your tunic, and your mother had to spend a whole night mending it. You think about the idea of a special set of clothes just for sleeping, and you realize that this is a concept that is far in the future. A mainstream historical fact is that the concept of sleepwear, or pajamas, as we know them today, is a relatively modern invention. For much of the Middle Ages, people slept in their underclothes, or, as we've already covered, in nothing at all. The clothes they owned were too valuable to be worn down by sleeping in them, and the idea of having a separate set of clothes just for rest was a luxury that was far beyond the reach of most people. The idea of a pajama, a garment that is both comfortable and a symbol of rest, is a concept that is far in the future. You can almost feel the rough wool of your tunic on your skin, a feeling that is both familiar and a little bit uncomfortable. Historians still argue whether the lack of sleepwear was a sign of a simpler, more practical life or a sign of a more difficult, less comfortable one. Was it a matter of necessity, or was it a cultural norm that we've long since forgotten? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a man who was so rich he had a new tunic for every night of the week, and he was so proud of it that he would show them to everyone he met. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of extravagance that was attached to the idea of a new set of clothes. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some wealthy households, a special kind of nightshirt, often made of fine linen, was used. These nightshirts were a symbol of status and wealth, a way of showing that you were so rich that you could afford to have a special garment just for sleeping. This is a far cry from your rough woolen tunic, but you can see the appeal of having a little more comfort and luxury in your life. You close your eyes and let the gentle hum of your own peaceful slumber lull you into a deeper rest, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the city is still at work. The idea of fancy nightclothes fades into a gentle hum, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. As you drift, your mind wanders to the seasons. You remember the long, dark nights of winter, a time when you would sleep for a long, unbroken stretch, and the short, bright nights of summer, a time when you would sleep in short, broken intervals. Your sleep schedule, you realize, is not a constant, it is a fluid, ever-changing thing, dictated by the sun. A mainstream historical fact is that in the pre-industrial world, people's sleep schedules were heavily influenced by the seasons and the availability of light. In the winter, when the days were short and the nights were long, people would often sleep for a longer, more continuous period. In the summer, when the days were long and the nights were short, people would often sleep in shorter, broken intervals. This was a life dictated by the sun, a life that was in tune with the natural rhythm of the earth. You can almost feel the long, cold darkness of a winter's night and the short, warm light of a summer's day, a feeling that is both familiar and a little bit strange. Historians still argue whether this seasonal sleep schedule was a source of hardship or a source of strength. Did the changing sleep patterns make people more tired and overworked, or did it make them more adaptable and resilient? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a man who was so lazy he would sleep all winter and work all summer, which he claimed was a much more efficient way of living. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of adaptation that was required to survive in a world without electricity. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some cultures, the winter was seen as a time of spiritual significance. The long, dark nights were seen as a time of introspection and reflection, a time when the world was asleep and the only one awake was God. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural world to amplify the sacred. You close your eyes and let the gentle rhythm of the seasons lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, The world of the spirit is still at work. The gentle rhythm of the seasons fades, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. Your mind, however, is not focused on the present, but on the future, or more specifically, on your death. You're thinking about the possessions you will leave behind, the few things you own that have meaning and value. You remember a conversation you overheard between your parents about your family's bed, a conversation that made you realize that a bed is not just for sleeping, it's a legacy. A mainstream historical fact is that in the medieval world, beds were often mentioned in wills and other legal documents. A bed was a valuable piece of furniture, and it was often passed down from one generation to the next. A father might leave his bed to his eldest son. A mother might leave her bed to her eldest daughter. This was a way of ensuring that the bed's rich history and meaning would be carried on, a way of keeping the family's story alive. The bed, you realize, is not just a piece of furniture, it's a piece of your family's history, a tangible link to the past. You can almost feel the weight of this history, a sense of responsibility to the generations that came before you. Historians still argue whether this practice was a sign of practicality or a sign of sentimentality. Was it a way of ensuring that a valuable piece of furniture was passed on, or was it a way of keeping the family's story alive? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a travelling minstrel about a man who left his bed to his son, but with the condition that he had to sleep in it every night, which he claimed was a lot more work than he thought. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of responsibility that was attached to the bed. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some wills, the bed was described with a level of detail that was almost poetic. The colour of the sheets, the type of wood, the specific carvings on the headboard were all mentioned in great detail. This was a way of giving a sense of permanence and meaning to a piece of furniture that was often a witness to a person's entire life. You close your eyes and let the gentle memory of your family's story lull you into a deeper slumber. A gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the family is still at work. The weight of your family's history fades, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. Your mind, however, wanders to a different kind of life, a different kind of sleeping arrangement. You're thinking about the servants in the Lord's castle, the people who serve the king and queen you imagined earlier. You remember a story you overheard from a travelling merchant about the sleeping arrangements of these servants, and you realize that their sleep was a lot less comfortable than your own. A mainstream historical fact is that for the servants in a wealthy household or a castle, a peaceful, private night's sleep was a luxury they rarely, if ever, experienced. They often slept in the halls, in the kitchen, or on a simple straw mattress in a cramped, shared room. Their sleep was often interrupted by the demands of their masters, who might call on them at any hour of the night. The bed was not a place of rest, it was a place of work, a place where they were always on call. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues the simple act of sleeping with a deep sense of social inequality. You can almost feel the cold stone floor on your back, the rough wool of your blanket, and the sense of constant vigilance that comes with being a servant. Historians still argue whether this living arrangement was a source of hardship or a source of community. Did the close quarters bring the servants closer together, or did it lead to more tension and conflict? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard about a servant who was so tired he fell asleep while serving the king, and the king's only punishment was to make him stand up all night. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of exhaustion that was a part of a servant's life. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some households, the servants were given a special kind of bed, a simple wooden frame with a straw mattress, that was reserved for them. This was a way of giving a sense of dignity and respect to a class of people who were often seen as disposable. This is a far cry from your own bed, which is a place of solitude and rest. You close your eyes and let the gentle hum of the servant's life lull you into a deeper slumber, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of social inequality is still at work. The hum of the servant's life fades, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. But as you drift, a new feeling comes to you, a feeling of unease. You're thinking about a specific time of night, a time that your grandmother called the witching hour. It's the time, when evil things happen. It's the time when spirits are most active, when curses are most potent, and when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. A mainstream historical fact is that throughout the Middle Ages, the time between midnight and 3 a.m. was widely considered the witching hour. This was a time of profound spiritual significance, a time when the world was at its quietest, and the only ones awake were believed to be witches, demons, and other malevolent spirits. This was a time of profound fear and superstition, a time when people would not leave their homes, and they would say special prayers to protect themselves from the darkness. The witching hour was not just a time on a clock, it was a state of being, a state of profound vulnerability. You can almost feel the weight of this belief, a sense of quiet reverence and fear for the darkness. Historians still argue whether the belief in the witching hour was a source of social control or a genuine expression of religious and spiritual belief. Was it a way of keeping people in their homes and under the control of the church? Or was it a genuine attempt to make sense of the mysterious and unpredictable nature of the night? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling priest about a man who was so afraid of the witching hour that he would go to bed at 9 p.m. and wake up at 4 a.m. to avoid it. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of fear and superstition that was attached to the witching hour. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often used specific herbs or prayers to ward off the dangers of the witching hour. A sprig of rowan wood placed above a door, for instance, was said to keep witches away, while a specific prayer to a patron saint of protection was said to calm the mind. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural and the sacred to fight against the profane. You close your eyes and let the gentle hum of your own peaceful slumber lull you into a deeper rest, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest sleep, the world of the spirit is still at work. The fear of the witching hour fades, and you are drifting now, your body finally at peace. Your mind, however, is not focused on the present, but on the day that has just ended. You're thinking about the long, hard work you did, the sun beating down on your back, the ache in your muscles. You're thinking about the simple meal you had with your family, the taste of the warm bread and the dried fish. You're thinking about the stories and songs your father and mother told, the sound of your sister's soft humming. You're thinking about the long, hard day that has just ended, and you are finally ready to lay down and rest. A mainstream historical fact is that for the vast majority of people in the Middle Ages, the day was a long, arduous affair, filled with physical labor and a constant struggle for survival. The end of the day, therefore, was a time of profound relief, a time to finally put down your tools and rest your weary body. The act of lying down on your bed, whether it was a straw sack or a feather bed, was a moment of pure, unadulterated pleasure. This is a powerful idea, one that imbues the simple act of sleeping with a deep sense of purpose and meaning. The bed is not just a place of rest, it's a reward for a day's work. You can almost feel the weight of this satisfaction, a sense of quiet accomplishment for having survived another day. Historians still argue whether this cycle of work and rest was a source of hardship or a source of strength. Did the hard work make people more tired and overworked, or did it make them more resilient and appreciative of the simple things in life? You'd probably say it was a bit of both. You remember a light joke you heard from a traveling minstrel about a man who was so tired he fell asleep while standing up, and he was so proud of it that he would tell everyone he met. It's a silly story, but it captures the very real sense of exhaustion and satisfaction that was attached to the end of a long day. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that people often had a small ritual to mark the end of the day, a small prayer, a quick drink of water, or a specific movement of the body was a way of saying goodbye to the day and welcoming the night. This was a form of folk magic, a way of using the natural world to amplify the sacred. Now, you've heard about the bizarre sleep habits, the communal beds, the strange remedies, and the ancient fears that shaped how medieval people rested. You've journeyed through their nighttime world, and you've felt the weight of their lives, their beliefs, and their fears. As you lie here, your journey through the medieval night is coming to an end. The last embers of the fire have finally gone out, and the darkness is complete. But it's a darkness that feels safe now, a darkness you understand. You can hear the soft breathing of your family, the gentle, rhythmic chewing of the cow in the corner. The world outside is still and quiet. And you are here, in your small, shared sanctuary. You pull your rough blanket up to your chin, and you feel the weight of the straw sack beneath you. It's not the most comfortable bed in the world, but it's yours. The sounds of the day have faded, and the worries of tomorrow are a distant hum. Your journey through this strange, sleepy world is over. You are here, safe and sound, ready for the deepest rest. Close your eyes now, and let the quiet wash over you, a gentle wave carrying you far away. Let your body finally relax, the tension in your shoulders and your back dissolving into the soft night. The stories are done, the fears are put to rest, and the world is quiet. Just breathe. Let the silence be a blanket, warm and soft, and let the quiet be a lullaby. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to see. Just rest, just sleep. You've earned it. End of script. Sweet dreams.